Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. And as usual, I will remind you, don't forget to join the mailing list. Today is the day I will be sending out my newsletter. I send one out every week, and I've sent 4 out. This will be the 5th one, and I will remember to update the subject line in the email this time. And you can sign up at CanadaReport.co or CanadaPoly.com, and you can also join in the conversation. Yesterday in the forums, we were talking about the finer points of what the recently reported lab leak theory means. So yesterday's discussion led to discussing lab leak theory and how that implicates or how that impacts kind of the wider COVID narrative and what people are talking about and how they talk about it. It's very interesting, really. So join us. Come over and join the conversation. All right, getting into the news. Did you know, were you aware? I wasn't aware. Yesterday, 327 MPs to 1 voted in favor of putting our federal elections on hold indefinitely. Only one voted no, Derek Sloan. Every other so-called conservative voted in favor of this. Wild, right? Here's the House of Commons motion, and I'll get to that in just a second. Here's Lucian Scott, and he says, every single MP except Derek Sloan voted to pass a bill declaring the suspension of elections during a pandemic. Do you realize this will never end? Trudeau will be in power forever, and the CPC, NDP, GRN, BQ all voted for it. The Conservatives all voted for it. They could have passed it without the Conservatives, but everybody said, you know what? Safety over democracy, everyone. It's for your safety. Lucian continues, variants will ensure that this never ends. Canada is now officially a banana republic run by a dictator. There is no opposition. You have no voice in how you're governed. Just pay your taxes and shut up. We ran an election in Afghanistan where the Taliban were blowing up polling stations and shooting voters, but it's too dangerous here in Canada because there's a virus that is, might impact our something or other, according to some people, maybe, sort of. Anyway, vote number 118, 43rd Parliament, second session. The House remind the government that a general election was held in 2019 and sadly note that more than 1.3 million Canadians, including almost 360,000 Quebecers, have been infected with COVID-19 and that nearly 25,000 people have died as a result. Hold on, I'll get to the meaty part. The meaty part's right after it. In the opinion of the House, holding an election during a pandemic would be irresponsible, and that it is the responsibility of the government to make every effort to ensure that voters are not called to the polls as long as this pandemic continues. So, lucky us, we don't get to vote out anybody that we disagree with. We have absolutely no recourse. Call your MP? Why? There's no election to be had, right? Sorry, man. Justin's in charge, and there's nothing you can do about it. Imagine Stephen Harper did this. Imagine the outrage. Imagine people being upset. So now that we've got powers that are able to stop elections, and Justin Trudeau's done that, Canada to send $25 million in aid to Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. Canada will provide $25 million to Palestinian civilians affected by recent conflict with the Israelis in the Gaza Strip and West Bank, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Friday. Trudeau said in a news release that the funding will go directly to experienced organizations that will help the most vulnerable Palestinian civilians cope after the conflict. Color me skeptical, but I don't think that sending this money is going to help the most vulnerable Palestinians. I have a feeling that it's going to other sources or other places. I haven't seen any real evidence that any of the aid money actually goes to aid in Palestine or the West Bank or the Gaza Strip or anything like that. I'm very, very skeptical of this money. And it's not like we don't have a dark side of the moon to visit. It's not like I feel like we could meme this. Like Canada and the dark side of the moon, there's something there. It's not like we don't have problems that require money or something. It's not like that $25 million for the Gaza and the West Bank, so say, could not be used in Canada to do good somewhere for some Canadians, right? And it seems tone deaf to have all of those pending bills, the moon visit, right? Dark side of the moon, the fresh water in Canada for Canadian citizens. These things are pending. We've got to pay for them. So 25 million out of those coffers seems like, dollars that don't multiply. And maybe you say, maybe we should be generous with our money. Okay. Pretend. Let's pretend that instead of Canada being a country, Canada's just a guy, right? Canada got a terrible pandemic last year, lost his job, was unable to leave his house for a year, and is in desperate debt because he used his credit card to manage the last year of terrible, awful whatever. And he made some bad choices too through the year, right? Whenever he got some money, he lent it out to his friends or sent it off to a charity or whatever. So would now be the time to pull out his credit card, look on the TV, focus on the number, and dial that 1-800 number to donate to the World Wildlife Foundation, right? Jerry, are you there? I've got 25 million here, but I'm not sure if it's going to go through. Put in 24 million, and then we'll call back and do the last million. Not sure it's going to go right under up to the line, right? Is this the time for that, Canada? The guy who's in his apartment desperately trying to give his buddy 25 million bucks? No, probably not, right? Probably not a good time to start whipping out the credit card to donate to a charity of your choice, right? Even if it comes with a tax break, even if it comes with some maybe good feelings attached to it, right? Like I've done my civic duty. I've spent my 25 million today. Now, where am I going to get some food? Time to go stand at my street corner in Kitchener, right? With a sign, right? Oh, maybe on Highway 7 there on, what street is that? Hold on, I have to think. Highway 7 and Bruce Street or Edna. One of those. There's always the guy with the sign. Anyway, went too far with that joke. Okay, moving on to the Canadian economy. Mark Carney favors massive corporate welfare for solar panels. He admits most solar panel components are from China. China's coal-powered mines and factories make solar products in a region suspected of forced labor. Does his company get solar products there? I asked. Yeah, so... Okay, here's the section in the video where Polyev kind of asks him about that, and he says, "Oh, well, not to my knowledge, but not to my knowledge, could always change, right?" Here's the clip.
Point, but you would think you would know one way or the other whether your materials are, being that you are responsible for environment, social, and governance for this massive $500 billion enterprise, that you would know off the top of your head if the materials were coming from a place known for slavery, genocide, and coal-fired electricity.
What I'm saying, Mr. Polyev, is I do not believe that is the case.
But you haven't verified it.
So you've asked me the question. Well, I have no reason to believe that it is the case. No.
Yeah. Okay. But you
have no reason to believe that it's the case. But I mean, like, isn't it? So most solar components are built in China, and China's coal-powered mines and factories make solar products in a region suspected of forced labor. No reason to believe, but you haven't checked. Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. We've been talking about vaccination passports, and vaccination passports are tied closely with digital identification. And so I wanted to show you that digital identification is being introduced, and in the UK, they're calling it a government accused of introducing ID cards by stealth, talking about the vaccine passport, right? COVID ID posed one of the greatest threats to freedom in Britain for decades while providing absolutely no benefits to the public health. The domestic use of these digital passes will turn us into segregated checkpoint nation. Absolutely open for all. And here's Ontario's digital ID plan. In late 2021, we will introduce a digital ID, digital identity, a new electronic government issued ID that lets people and businesses prove who they are online. And so digital IDs for individuals update and show vaccination records. Why would you need to do that with something that's private, like your vaccination records? Your vaccination records are private. You should not have to pull out a digital ID to prove your vaccination status to anybody. That is something that is certainly private to you, and that is not shouldn't be demanded by businesses. But slippery slope. That's where we're going. It's all coming together nicely. Can you see it? I mean, I can see it pretty clearly, but I'm not sure if my interpretation of this is. If I'm relaying it as clearly as I think I am. Anyway, it seems like we're on the fast track to getting this. This is the end of, in late 2021, right? That's when they want to introduce this stuff. In late 2021, we will introduce a new digital identity, a new electronic government issued ID that lets people and businesses prove who they are online. Scary. Okay, here's the Nova Scotia Premier, and he is talking about how it'll be months and months before he's ready to relax the isolation hotel rules because of the variants of concern. Now, we're at a point now where we have less cases and we're more locked down than we were at this point last year. Last year, we had almost no data. And this year, we've got a year's worth of data. And they're saying, oh, yeah, well, we've got to lock down. And also, we need to completely reimagine our entire society with mandated vaccines in certain situations, with vaccine digital IDs, right, that can show your vaccine status. We're on the fast track to that. This is scary. And we are not on the fast track to getting back to normal. Right? They want to, with cases low, with all of the data that we've got, they want to make sure that a vaccine passport is the only way out of this, I think. And so with the Nova Scotia Premier saying it's going to be months and months, what happens in months and months? The seasonal flu season starts, right? So in months and months, what's going to happen? They're going to say there's a whole bunch of cases. Oh no, we need to stop these opening plans. We need to definitely have these digital passports. And until the digital passports happen, no more freedom, basically. That's what I think. It's very scary. Very scary. Here's the Premier. Hold on, I've got to cue it up. He sounds a little underwater to me, but he's talking here about the second dose and Canadians getting, because the person on interviewing him is saying, like, can people who have had both doses skip these quarantines and all of that other stuff? And he's saying variants of concern, blah, 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 months and months and months. Here we go.
Obviously, another level of protection after all Canadians have second doses. But we're not there yet. We're just starting to offer our second dose next week. We're just finishing getting out our eligibility for first dose. So it's going to be a number of months before we're comfortable with taking off that isolation period.
That's incredible. A couple of months. And by the time a couple of months goes by, we're already stuck. The people who are travelers coming from outside the U.S. who are exempt from the travel restrictions, temporary foreign workers, some international students, some people who have been approved to become a permanent resident of Canada but who are not yet permanent residents, immediate family members with written authorization from IRCC to reunite with a temporary resident of Canada. Transiting passengers must remain in the secure area of Canadian airport to complete their connection. So if you're going from like somewhere to the United States but stopping in Vancouver or something like that. Members of the Canadian forces visiting forces coming to perform official duties, Department of National Defense, and their immediate family members. Accredited diplomats and their immediate family members, including North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, those under the United Nations Headquarters Agreement, and other organizations. Air and Marine crew members, French citizens who live in St. Pierre and Miquelon and have only been in Canada, the US, or St. Pierre and Miquelon during the 14 days before the day they seek to enter Canada. Any person, these places are seen as the same as Canada. Any person who does not pose a significant harm to public health in the opinion of the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada, who will provide an essential service while in Canada. Any person whose presence in Canada is in the national interest in the opinion of the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, or Minister of Foreign Affairs. If you fall under this exemption, you have to demonstrate that you're entering Canada for a non-discretionary reason. The exemption may be applied only by any of these three ministers listed above. This exemption is for exceptional circumstances only. All other options must be considered before it will be considered. If you think you may qualify for a national interest exemption, you can contact your nearest visa office. I wonder how you apply for that. Call one of those ministers directly? Hello. Yes, I live in Canada, and any person who is coming at the invitation of the Minister of Health for the purposes of COVID-19 assistance, any person whose purpose is to make medical deliveries. Seems like an exhaustive list, right? Lots of people exempt from these lockdown rules. Kelly Brown notes airlines are using different streams to separate vaccinated, partially vaccinated, and unvaccinated travelers, direct from the very troubling GovCan advisory document, Priority Strategies to Optimize Testing and Quarantine at Canada's Borders. So we've got lots of documents. I showed this to you before. Even fully vaccinated people need to have an arrival test. Wow. And airports, airlines use different streams to separate vaccinated, partially vaccinated, and unvaccinated travelers. These things are scary, right? Yeah, this is a segregated sign, right? Europeans only, non-Europeans only, right? Wow. Does it help? I don't know. Booking for park tables must be made 5 days in advance. Calgary pops the top on alcohol in parks pilot project. So you have 30 tables, I guess. That's what I heard. Somebody said there's 30 tables to book. Like that's all there is for all of Calgary. So 30 tables to book, must be booked 5 days in advance, and you can drink alcohol at the tables. This isn't destined for a complete disaster. Like, no, it's better that we do it this way and don't go back to normal. Yeah, no, it's better. Right. Unbelievable. Oh, this is another unbelievable one. Arrest warrants issued for public health order violations. This is steinbeckonline.com and written by Taylor Brock. The pastor of the church in the rural municipality of Hanover has posted on social media that there is an arrest warrant out for him. However, there is no indication whether or not this warrant is connected to a statement made earlier this afternoon by Winnipeg Police Service. Authorities say that the legal actions being taken against anti-mask rally leaders and others are a natural progression of previous enforcement efforts. Inspector Nick Paulette of the Winnipeg Police Service says that six individuals have an arrest warrant out for them, including an anti-mask rally leader under the Provincial Offence Act of not following the public health orders. The Public Safety Investigation Unit issued the warrants to individuals not following public health orders, which Paulette says could come from a variety of health order violations. A warrant is a higher response than an issuance of a ticket, but it is mirrored by the actions of the individual on the receiving end, Paulette said in a media conference Friday afternoon. Chris Sky, and I'm not going to attempt his other name, currently has an arrest warrant out for him in Manitoba. Paulette would not comment if they expect Sky to show up at a Winnipeg rally scheduled for Friday. The Provincial Offences Act warrant is for his previous actions in Manitoba, hosting a large anti-mask rally at the Forks, which was against the public health orders. He's the only person of the six with a warrant the WPS would name. Sky told his followers this week he did not intend to step foot in Manitoba Friday after promoting a rally in the city weeks earlier. He was arrested last week for uttering death threats to Ontario's Premier Doug Ford, assaulted a peace officer, and other charges. His discharge from custody came with a curfew to remain in his Ontario home each evening. So very interesting developments with Chris Sky. I've said before, one, they're trying to provoke people, and two, there would be a group that would make themselves evident and evident like this, like able to identify who the group is, and they would become the other, the enemy. And something that was written before was like, it's you patriots, like you guys are the ones who are going to be seen as the bad guys. You see what they're doing? Oh, wrong way. They're trying to provoke. They are provoking. They're enforcing some laws for some people and other laws for other people, depending on if the event that they're running agrees with the political ideology of the police force or of the sitting government. This is not appropriate. This is not acceptable. But this is what's happening. Okay, and the identifiable group is the anti-vax, anti-maskers. It fits quite nicely, and they want to make those the other because then it drives uptake of vaccination. I think they're stalling at around 60%, and the younger people in Guelph anyway, it's 25%. So hey, good job, kids. Stay smart. Don't be swayed by the foolish media. It is foolish. Okay, Mayor Brian Bowman. Brim Browns? I wonder where that came from. Is urging Manitobans not to attend a rally scheduled for Friday evening. He's calling for a super fine of $100,000 for people who organize rallies against the health orders. He says this will deter the events from being organized and show respect for all those Winnipeggers who are following the rules. Yeah. So super fines for some people, right? Based on what they're protesting, but like the Palestinian protests are just fine. Skeptical me again, like I'm just color me wrong thinker, right? Who knows? And that's going to be something very soon. I mean, I think it already is. But if you're skeptical of this stuff and you're skeptical of people's mayor's unilateral right to say, you know what, for this one, you littered. And because you've littered before and we've known that you're a litterer and you don't respect the cleanliness of our community, you litterer, this littering fine is going to be $100 million to show that we think what you're doing is deplorable. Do people do that? Hey, opium drug addict who's put a tent up in our lovely downtown core, this time, for this tent, right now, this super fine right now is going to be $200 million, you deplorable tent putting up person. No, they don't do that. Right? Isn't that weird? The mayors aren't doing that. But for this, they are. Are the mayors overstepping? Do the mayors have that power? Does Brim Browns have that power? Brian Bowman, Brim Browns. Right. I don't think they do. But hey, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. And interestingly enough, if you're in Montreal, you could go to the Game 6 tonight if you've got $1 million, right? Forget your fines. You can't attend church. Pastors go to jail. Your kids can't go to school or play hockey. But you can go to Montreal's Church of Hockey Saturday for Leafs and Habs if you're a millionaire. These hot tickets are even more expensive than the COVID-19 tickets handed out. Okay, so, right, are we all square at where we're at? If you're part of the ruling elite class, you can go play hockey, get paid millions of dollars for a Stanley Cup game, go out to a restaurant before or after, make sure that your millionaire buddies are nice and entertained in the boxes, right? Because some people get to go to a game, right? Depending on where you are in Canada. And if you're a deplorable person who is skeptical about how many times the public health is screwed up, skeptical about how many times we've been told borders don't matter and masks shouldn't be used and blah, 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 and been wrong, and then they changed the story and we're supposed to just accept it and not question it. If you're one of them, you're evil and need to be dealt with super fines because the mayor said so. Welcome to Canada in 2021. Are you concerned yet? Very concerned. Really, honestly. It is wild. And nobody seems to be, like, you'd think pastors, you'd think community leaders, you'd think people with brains in their head would say, this is wrong. We should talk out about this because it's wrong. Because eventually it's going to get them too, right? Like, if there's like a chomp, 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 chomp. There's like a, like Tremors. There's a worm eating and it's going to get their feet eventually, right? Like, and it's getting, we're going to talk about the salon owners and the people who've been shut down for a year, the restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. It's eating them up. You can't fight this, right? Like, you can try, but they're going to call you these names. They're going to call for super fines. They're going to give you $30,000 in fines, right, Mark Friesen? They're going to give you all of this to make you stressed because it stresses people out, and they're just not going to deal with it for a year or two. And then when this becomes in the public zeitgeist, it becomes accepted and cultural that if you break the rules, then you'll get fined and shut down. Your restaurant is not going to be a source of strength. You can't open it. Your small business is not going to be a source of community rally point. They can't. They're not allowed. You're not allowed. And so you're alone, you're isolated, you're out of money, you're out of resources, you're out of anything. And the government's just printing your money, taxes that we'll have to pay back later to sustain the fight. They've got unlimited money for lawyers, unlimited money to shut you down, unlimited money for overtime, 200 mounted police officers to shut down Adam Skelly while Costco operates a block down the street. Are you kidding me? We had indications that this was a problem. We knew that this was going to be a problem. And now they've voted themselves. We don't need to have an election because you know why? It's dangerous to the Canadian public. You're welcome, Canada. Right? We're looking out for you. Go watch the hockey, but don't you dare protest, because if you protest, we will shut you down. Even further, sneaky liberals, budget $3 million to start censoring YouTube, right? Yes, Mr. Gallibo has already budgeted the money to start shutting down YouTube. So make sure you sign up for the newsletter list and the mailing list, because hopefully I'll be able to get in touch with you. $3 million. My goodness. It hasn't even been passed yet, but the Liberals have budgeted $3 million to begin work censoring YouTube, says Blacklock's reporter. We will continue to do all we can to get it through as quickly as possible, says Heritage Minister Stephen Gallibo on Thursday. A budget document tabled in the Commons included the budget line item funding for development for a framework to implement amendments to the Broadcasting Act, but neither the Commons nor the Senate has passed Bill C-10, an act to amend the Broadcasting Act. So I'm interested to see what happens with the elections, this one, bill, whatever bill number this is, vote number 118. Does this have to go to the Senate to be and then royal assent, or is it just like the House can pass it and bingo bango bongo, right? I'm not sure. I honestly don't know. So it's interesting. We're losing our freedom of speech. We're losing our ability. We're losing our internet. Here's Michael Geist. This is the man who wants This is who the Canadian government wants to regulate the internet. The CRTC yesterday released its wholesale internet rate decision, shocking the industry and consumer groups by reversing its 2019 ruling and virtually guaranteeing increased costs for consumers and less competition for internet services. Indeed, within hours, TechSavvy, one of the largest independent providers, announced that it was withdrawing from the forthcoming spectrum auction and would no longer offer mobile services. In other words, the competitive and consumer cost reverberations from the decision will impact both broadband and wireless services. When the increased costs coming from Bill C-10 for the internet services are added to the equation, the internet could get a lot more expensive in Canada. Much of the blame rests with the government, as it appointed CRTC Chair Ian Scott, who has presided over a dismantling of a pro-consumer, pro-innovative policy approach. Moreover, the former ISED Minister Navdeep Bains opened the door to this decision last summer by inviting the CRTC to re-examine the 2019 decision, and current ISI Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne is seemingly completely uninterested in his own department's digital files. I've written that this government has become the most anti-internet government in Canadian history, and the path that led to yesterday's decision vaults to near the top of the evidence list. And that's true. A very anti-internet government, and Canada did not used to be like this. The internet did not used to be like this. I could tell you stories of a free internet in 2008. It would shock you. Patrick Phillips says, more media coverage of the CPSO and the CPSBC threats against doctors. Third, doctors are being ordered to violate their patients' rights to be fully informed before receiving medical treatment, putting themselves at risk of eventual lawsuit. So this is the Western Standard covering the silencing of doctors by their governing bodies. Dr. Phillips goes on, I love this point because it's very important to know that while the manufacturers are immune, any healthcare worker who did not fully inform you of the risks and alternatives may be liable if you suffer harm from the vaccines. Moreover, the CPSO and its directors may also be liable if they're threatening doctors who try to inform the public about side effects. So very interesting. There's lots of lots of battles shaping up on informed consent, on who knew what when, all sorts of stuff. And I think that I don't know if we're going to get satisfaction out of all of this, because it doesn't seem like we will. It seems like what's going to happen is what's happening with people who are trying to get their grievances about lockdowns and masks redressed. They're being marginalized as anti-maskers, marginalized as ne'er-do-wells who should be given super fines, right? So extrapolate that strategy out to doctors, right? You find the doctors who are upset with things self-identify, and then the CPSO has the infrastructure, they're building it now, to go after the doctors who do what Dr. Phillips is doing. But that's what's right. Like, make no mistake, that's what you should do as a doctor. You should be standing up for your patients. But the current climate that we're in is not friendly to people who do what's right. And that's a scary thing to know, right? Okay, moving into reopening. Yeah, like a year and a half later, sure. Let's talk reopening. Every time we've talked about reopening, it has not resulted in reopening at all. It's resulted in more restrictions and further loss of civil liberties. So do you see the inversion of the language? Do you see what they've done, right? Reopening, let's talk about it. Is it going to happen? If by reopening you mean further restriction of our freedoms, then yes, it will, right? Okay, but here we go. They want to talk about female-run businesses and businesses owned by people who need help, et cetera, et cetera. This is, Victoria says, Open Ontario, #lockdown. You think it's just a haircut, but it's not by a long shot. And this is a screenshot of a meme. It says there are 30,000 registered hairstylists in Ontario who are not allowed to work. They're the only skilled trade who are not permitted to work. Electricians, carpenters, and plumbers and other male-dominated trades can work without restrictions. Hairstylists pay provincial trade dues to the Ontario College of Trades of approximately $15 million a year and receive nothing in return. Over 70% of registered hairstylists are women, many of them single mothers and entrepreneurs who make sacrifices and have to work long hours to make a living. Yeah, and yet those are the businesses that are shut down, right? Or an example of some of the businesses. Can anyone explain this to me? Do Ontario hairdressers have magical COVID spreading powers? Because if not, we're punishing largely female-owned and operated businesses with no viable explanation other than because. Yeah, yep. She says, yes, I need to charge my phone. My internet's behaving kind of strange. Hold on, let's get this loaded. Okay, my whole internet went down, so apologies, but now it's back, appears to be working. I hope you can see this after all that. Anyway, tentative reopening plans. The following chart gives a tentative outline of when the following activities could resume. Delays could arise based on high case counts or lower than expected vaccination rates. So it's all tied to vaccination rates. It all comes down back to vaccination rates. Check individual government plans for detailed restrictions. But it says shopping and services, and Ontario is the last opening mid-June. So I think it's June 12th for non-essential, according to the government, shopping. And then haircuts doesn't open until July 2nd, I think, or even later in July, but it looks like July 2nd. While haircuts will open before June, literally everywhere else. BC, the Atlantic provinces, Quebec, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, and Alberta. Right? So, or Newfoundland, New Brunswick, and PEI. It's already open as far as I understand, and BC. So, very interesting. Why are we punishing hairdressers? Why? What is the purpose of this? Who benefits? Why are we doing this at all? Yesterday, Doug Ford moving on to schools. Right? It doesn't help. It doesn't help anybody to decimate these small businesses. Moving into schools, yesterday Doug Ford sent a letter, so I'll tell you the whole story of this letter. Premier Doug Ford wrote to dozens of doctors, public health authorities, scientists, and teachers' unions yesterday seeking feedback by 5 p.m. today. The Ontario Public School Boards Association has issued a letter of their own saying schools should be the last to close and the first to open. So that's the too long didn't read. I'll show you the more information about that. Ford awaits response from dozens of experts, stakeholders before deciding on schools. This is yesterday. So I was wondering yesterday because a whole bunch of people were kind of reacting as if schools weren't going to reopen. And I thought, did they already make their decision? Apparently not. But anyway, here's the, and apparently not, Doug Ford hasn't announced the final decision, but the people the people who have been requested to give their feedback have given their feedback, and some publicly. Okay. And Colin DeMello is announcing this one. The Science Advisory Table has publicly responded to Premier Doug Ford's letter and recommended schools should reopen on a regional basis, right? The letter is signed by a number of groups, including Sick Kids, CHEO, OMA, and the Council of MOHs, Medical Officers of Health. Reopen schools regionally and manage the risks. Schools can reopen safely on a regional basis on the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, the local medical officers of health, school districts, and health system partners. Schools that reopen should maintain their public health measures vigorously and build on the strategies they've already developed to limit spread. So going back to school, we'll have kids masked and, playgrounds shuttered and all of that stuff. No progress has been made at all. It's very, very concerning because 41% of teachers, as far as I know, have been vaccinated. And if 41% is all that will get vaccinated, it seems like a very interesting thing to hold our children hostage while getting under half of the teachers vaccinated, right? Isn't that a weird, just a very strange. It tells me that it's totally a political move and not driven by the membership of the union, right? That's what it tells me. Or the membership of the union is broken and nobody's engaged except for the 40% who are calling for the vaccinations. But the 60% may have been bludgeoned into silence, right? Because everybody else was bludgeoned into silence. The only way you can speak is by not surrendering your body, right? Not surrendering your body for these injections. Anthony Furey noticed that Dr. Fissman is very upset with the Ontario Science Table, which indicates that maybe he's no longer a source on it. Fissman, says Anthony Fury, has clearly been sidelined by the Ontario Science Table and now has to resort to publicly critiquing them from afar. A good day for Ontario, says Anthony Fury. Fissman says, I disagree with much of this morning's guidance from the Ontario Science Table. We have an end to the pandemic in our reach in Ontario. We may get away with this gamble, or we may not. In my view, gambling on increasing ICU admissions and accelerated B1617 strain replacement, not worth it. So hopefully they've started to ignore the people who are calling for, or who are, I don't know, getting more and more unhinged in the public sphere. It's kind of weird, kind of strange to watch. And like him and Imgrind, right? Ryan Imgrind, both are interesting to watch because they were so sure, so cocky about their positions. And now, as things seem to be slipping away, and I don't know if their fans are turning on them, or if they're not being listened to, or what, but something seems to be changing for them, and it's coming through in their public discourse. Laura Stone says, Premier Ford presser concludes, we're going to make sure we'll have a great July, a great August. We want people to get back to normal. A great July and August. I'm interested in that because I've heard that from Kenny as well. Jason Kenny's been talking about a great July and August in Alberta, our wonderful Alberta summer. I don't understand. No, I do understand. Like, you've got to have messaging of hope, right? But it's interesting how it's all coordinated. Note the coordination. The coordination tells me that there's more to this, more than meets the eye here. I don't know what, but it tickles my brain. Alberta is providing $45 million to give students extra help with literacy and numeracy after the challenges of this pandemic. We know that literacy and numeracy are critical for young students, and getting timely help at the start of the upcoming school year will ensure that all students are set up for future learning success. So I don't know if kids will go back to school in Ontario for the last month. Kids are already back in school in most places. I'm not worried about COVID. I'm worried about the damaging mental environment and the attempt, the move to have 12-year-olds eligible for a vaccine with not informing the parents whatsoever. That's crazy. That's round the bend nuts. And it gives me suspicion when they say that and then say, and we've got to get the kids back in school as soon as possible, right? I'm like, oh, I don't know. Suspicious Mark P shows up when that happens. And it's like, there's maybe a reason. Maybe the two things are somehow related or connected somehow, right? I don't know. Who knows? Certainly not me. Okay, I'm going to move over to the redacted part of the show. We're just going to talk about vaccines, but I've got some things that I'm sure that YouTube won't like. I've been right the last few days, by the way. Nothing's been too spicy. I haven't tread on any YouTube toes, I guess, but I'm pretty sure that this one will. So I will move over to the redacted part of the show. If you want to stay just watching on YouTube, no problem. Thanks for watching. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. And if you want to watch the rest of it, head over to Rumble or Odysee or BitChute, and the rest of the show will be on there.